So a very warm welcome to our game today, and this is a game that, while it wasn't a perfect game, it's the reason why we all play chess. It's from 2016 from the London Chess Classic between Fabiano Caruana and Hikaru Nakamura. And this is a wonderful example of understanding when to sack a piece and understanding how activity of pieces are more important than even your queen. So what a wonderful game this was. We're going to begin with Fabiano, Fabi, as we all know, beginning with e4, and Hikaru playing with the black pieces, decides to play c5. So we're playing Sicilian. This is an attacking game. Both players want to go for it, and we have a lot of fireworks in this game. Knight f3, followed by d6, d4, c takes d4, knight takes d4, knight f6, knight c3, a6, the knight off variation, then we get bishop to g5, e6, f4, h6 by Hikaru. We get bishop to h4, queen b6, attacking the pawn, and then what would you play here? As you can see, we're still in book move. This is all book, so if you play the Sicilian or the open Sicilian, then the knight off variation, what would you play here as white? Well, the most common move here is to move your queen up. So queen d2, and then after black plays to take the pawn, and black jumps back to a3. They've now, white's got compensation for the pawn that's given up. It's got the rook on the open b file, tying down this bishop for the time being. Of course, you can push. But just very interesting, all about gaining the open file and attacking. So instead, Fabiano, after queen b6, says, well, I'm going to play a3. He says, you can take it if you want. And here we get bishop to e7. Now, the difference with the pawn and a3 is if now you take the pawn, well, can you see how you can trap the queen? That's right, you go knight to a4, and now there is no escape square for the queen. Has to take the rook, and white is completely winning. So a little trap if you play the Sicilian as black to be aware of, or if you play the open Sicilian with white. So after this we get bishop to f2, attacking the queen through the x-ray. So we get queen to c7, queen to f3, knight to d7, the long castles by Fabi. We get b5, g4, and both players are out technically of book, but as far as chess.com says, then we get g5 and we get h4. A good attacking move. So here we are, we're on move 14 for white, move 13 for black. 14 moves in, and well, this is setting up to be a really exciting game. Pawn pushes everywhere. Now instead of h4, if you had taken f takes g5, well then you could have got knight to e5, winning the pawn as you're attacking the queen, and then you got the double attack here. So that's why we had h4. So what would you play here? Well, we get a great move of g takes f4. Afterwards we get bishop to e2, and here Fabi plays b4. Now b4 is a strange move. It's a mistake, as chess.com's engine shows. But here we're seeing grandmaster level preparation and understanding, and we get to see how far ahead they're thinking. Because what's the reason here? The better reasoning here is to go knight to e5. So after knight to e5, attacking the queen, you get queen to f4, taking the pawn. But then we get knight takes pawn and g4. And if you take back with the bishop, then you get e5. Now e5 is attacking the knight, it's attacking the queen, and you've now got a double attack on the bishop here. So you're in a bit of trouble. So what would you do? Well, can you see how you could defensively maneuver your way out of this somewhat by white? Can you see the defensive move, a good defensive attacking move? You don't want to be responding to the threats that are up against you. You want to respond with a threat of your own. And here you would see the very nice move of knight to d5. Now, after knight to d5, you would get knight takes d5. And here we see the idea of why Hikaru had gone with this b4 pawn push, because after knight to d5, you have to move your queen out. So if you drop your queen back, you want to protect your bishop per se. Well then, if this pawn had been traded off, so let's just pretend it's like this here, well then black could play here, and black is completely fine here, up a pawn. If you trade off the bishops, you've got black is doing very nicely here. Black is doing very nicely, but instead in the game we didn't get that, because that was what Hikaru was thinking, was if you take, well then we'll start this series of events. So in the game, Fabi did actually take, and so Hikaru played knight to e5. Then we had queen to f4 as we saw, and we had knight to g4. We know what's happening next in Hikaru's mind. We get bishop to g4. So we just looked at the variation of how things could have worked out. So Fabiano obviously would have thought about this, because we get pawn to e5. So we saw with this variation that Hikaru obviously had thought about, and that he was going to end up winning the pawn and have a nice little attack down the c file. But here Fabiano shows grandmaster understanding when it comes to positional play and activity of pieces over the value of a seemingly your best piece. So can you see, with that in mind, the brilliant move that Fabiano Caruana plays here on move 19? And this is truly wonderful. This is a joy to watch because you get to understand his thinking. Fabiano plays the ridiculous, the outrageous, and the simply brilliant queen takes f6. Brilliant move. Sacking his queen for a knight. So clearly, Hikaru's like, well, I'm going to take that, because what else am I going to do? So he takes bishop f6, then we get knight to d5, attacking the queen and trying to win this piece back. So clearly Hikaru goes to d8, protecting his bishop. So Fabi now goes to knight to f5. So these knights are jumping, as Hikaru says. And here we get a mistake by Hikaru. We get rook to b8. And here this is really helpful, because we get to see another excellent move by Fabiano. Fabiano plays knight to f6. You're thinking, well, why is he doing knight to f6? Isn't he running out of pieces for the attacks? Is he just going to sack all of these pieces? Well, Hikaru takes back queen to f6. And now we get rook to f6, attacking the queen. Now this is a tactical mistake. According to chess.com, a better move would have been to take with the knight, but Fabiano clearly has a plan here. This is not a one move by move situation. So he's attacking the queen. So now we get bishop to e6. We get rook to d1. And now Hikaru is like, okay, I'm going to castle, and that's a great move. He's going to castle. I'm going to get out of trouble. And here Fabiano plays h5. Now the idea of h5 is get your bishop here to h4 and try and claim this diagonal. Then we get queen to g5, trying to stop this idea, and also attacking white's bishop. So then we get bishop to e3. Another great move, because of course if Hikaru decides to take, well then Fabiano can play his rook to g1 and he would win back the queen. So Hikaru decides to go back to f6 now, since it would take two moves for Fabi to get back. Then we get knight to h6, protected of course by the bishop being here. Then we get king to h8, and then we get bishop to f5. Now the computer really likes to move knight to f6. So why does it like knight to f6? Because if you take knight to f6, well, they're going to take back rook to f7. Then you will get bishop to e6. And if you play something along the lines as just for instance, play the blunder, play the rook back, you're now attacking the queen, you're also attacking the rook, and after trading off, we would see that white is completely winning in one of those lines. So bishop to f5, and here Hikaru blunders, he plays knight to e7, and we get b5. Now b5 is a bit of a strange move by Fabi, but basically maybe he's just waiting to be challenged here on the D file, because can you see this combination, how this combinations, because that seems like a good move here. Fabi's made a bit of an inaccuracy, a bit of a mistake maybe. I think I'd be looking to play this move. But what would happen if you traded the rooks, rook takes, and rook takes back with check, the queen takes, and on d8, and now you take, if you take back with the pawn, well then there's a nice little Fakaruni. And thank you very much for the queen, thank you for playing, the game is now over. So Hikaru is lined up here with so many beautiful opportunities. So was Fabiana. So we get queen to e8, and can we see what the move that Fabiana plays now? Well, now Fabi plays f7, and slightly different positions on the board, but ultimately it's going to end the same, because after rook takes and f7, rook takes e6, attacking the queen, queen takes b5. Now Hikaru's on the attack here. Can he take this pawn? Well, no, because after h6, Hikaru resigns. Why does Hikaru resign? Well, let's look at a few quick variations. h6, if you go g8, we've got g1 check, followed by g7, followed by check, followed by king to f8, rook to h8 check, e7 check. If you decided to take, well, that would be a bad mistake to take the hanging bishop, because it would be checkmate. A whole lot of different variations. If you go back here, after the check and h8, if you decided to go here, well, then you could just very simply take on b8, queen takes b8, check with the bishop, king comes here, checkmate. If the king went to f8 here, we would also see the same situation of a checkmate. Or if we saw h6, g8, g1, check, 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 and the king is lost. There's lots of different variations where you can win the queen by deflecting as well. But anyways, a very beautiful finish to the game, and Fabiano Caruana showing us why chess is just exciting. Thank